what is conscious? The matter can have consciousness. Our great J.C. Bose said that. No one believed it. But now we slowly believe that consciousness, the boundary between the conscious and unconscious is so thin that you can have something called artificial intelligence and you can have a debate between
once Thakur says, this is Anukulchandra says, welcomes science. Dharma welcomes science. And spirituality, he is defining spirituality as cause finding go of life. Cause finding go of life with mental synthesis through realization. That is spirituality. Using our this body instrument, how to perceive finer thoughts, finer waves coming from around. That is spirituality. So there is no difference between spirituality and science. Now I would like to call upon Professor Dr. Anjan Dasgupta. He is ex-head of biochemistry, Calcutta University, as well as Kalyani University also. He is a distinguished person. He has come here to put his presentation. Dr. Dasgupta.
Good afternoon, everyone. And it is a privilege for me to come in this particular seminar, as the chair of the session said that we get very little opportunity to have conferences where we can simultaneously talk about spirituality and science and other social issues. And I thought that it will be interesting because unlike my previous speaker, I am a very much insider of such a movement because my grandfather was in Himayatpur, and I always am brought up in that environment where I always hear about what happened, what went wrong, what went right, what was the motivating factors, how some very small group of people made impossible possible. All those things I hear. And so the motivation for me is from within, not from outside. So with that small note, because we are born in what is called that 70 period where we had I was in a College Street, a school called Hindu School, where we had a peak of Naxalite movement. And at that time, it was very difficult to survive with an ideology which is just different from what we used to believe. So this conflict actually made us feel a lot of things, because that time everyone was, unlike the present period, everyone used to talk and read quite a bit. I'm telling you, all these leftist leaders, including the big Naxal leaders, they used to read quite a bit and they used to brainwash people very thoroughly. But one thing we had to fight, that what exactly we are standing upon. Can we be converted with this current, or we have anything of our own? That question was always haunting some of us, particularly few of us, I should say. So what I felt was very important. That's why I wrote the title of the theme is the beating the laws of probability. That is, you go towards a trend, be it a religious movement, be it a spiritual movement, be it a political movement. There is always a trendy movement, that there's a hype. And then there are some people who go against this hype. So basically what I felt was, whatever we learned in this particular, this kind of movement is, you have a hype and you have an anti-hype. And if these people who are apparently sometimes liberal, sometimes they are so conservative that if you go against any of these so-called liberal ideas, they will be very, very non-secular. Let me put it this way. So it's not so. So basically what I felt is, you either are in favor of the trend or you are against the trend. We pray to live. Actually, this is an advertisement for a famous insurance company. Because this safety, this fear for living, because you are always scared. If I go there, if I am scared, if I am not well, what will happen? Something may go wrong. So that's why the essence of the business model is to indicate dose of insecurity within us. See, if you don't do this, if you don't keep this insurance policy, something may go wrong, because you may be ill, you may be, and then.
So this is the line which I was mentioning. Shurasya dhara nishita duratya durgung padastha kavaya padanti. I am not very good in Sanskrit, but so I did not take any risk. These are the lines which from Kathopanishad. The difference says the quote implies that our life rests on a metastable thread that is very thin. What does this line has something to do with our spirituality? Many of you might have heard the term hemostasis. Hemostasis means the clot formation of blood. Those who are from biology, they know it. So, if you have a thrombus formation, then you have what is called thrombotic attack. On the other hand, if you have less clot formation, then you have bleeding. So, unless you have an optimal level of blood property, you cannot survive. Either you die of thrombotic attack or will die of bleeding. Similarly, we have something called thermostasis. You go to Siberia, you won't be frozen. You go to Sahara, you will be vaporized. Your body has a unique capability to maintain a temperature of 37 degrees centigrade or 98.2 degrees Fahrenheit. Why? Because you have what is called thermostasis. So your life is a fight against what is called equilibrium. Moment you are not living, you are dead, then it comes to the surrounding temperature. But as long as you live, you are living in a steady state, but that steady state is far from equilibrium. It is not a steady state. You are not really equilibrating with the trend. You are away from the trend. You are steady, but away from the trend. You are steady. You have the same temperature in Sahara and Siberia. See how surprising it is that you are not frozen. You are not washed away by the rains of Amazon. How? Your body has some unique capability that it doesn't get dissolved in water. So you have some peculiar property that you are not get washed out by water. You are not vaporized by heat. You are not frozen into cold. So these are the three very interesting. This is called hemostasis. Since I am an insider of satsang movement, the three principles preached by Thakur was Jajan, and Ishtapriti. That is, basically, Jajan means what to do, and Jajan means you talk about whatever you know, preach what you know, and Ishtapriti means is kind of microfinance, is something like what the Sikhs call Kar Seva. You have to do something of your own, out of your own hand. And it is something like a microfinance for which great Bangladeshi person got Nobel Prize. But the microfinance also is to some extent covered by this. So, Ishtopriti means also there is some degree of altruism in it. Altruism means is an evolutionary term that one sacrifices oneself for the sake of others. Although it doesn't sound very Darwinian, but very strangely, lot of animals do it. Like you can see the bees, the beehives are protected by the labor bees. And when it is attacked, the labor bees, they give their life to protect the labor bee. Now, what Darwin says? Darwin says that your existence is very selfish. But then how does altruism come from? Where it come from? I mean, that is something which we have to think of. That evolution is not very, one should not oversimplify, although Dawkins wrote a book called Selfish Gene, in which everything is selfish. But then we had also a book called Music of Life. And the author, Noble, his name is Dr. Noble, he said that life is nothing but an orchestra of all the genes. It is not a single gene event. It is not at all selfish. It is a beautiful cooperation of all the genes by which you get what is called the music of life. I don't resist the temptation to show this beautiful image. This is called strange attractor. And this strange attractor is what is called the proponent of what is called the chaos theory. And if you read books of Sanjeev Sanyal, who is a famous economist and the principal economic advisor of the present government, he has given a lot of importance to the chaos theory. It means that a small improbable event, a small perturbation, a flip of a wing of butterfly in New Year causes tornado in Haiti island. So it means a small change in initial condition can cause havoc in some other place, unrelated place. We saw that the collapse of the South Asian market, for some small bank, the bank people can tell you what exactly it was, but some small changes in somewhere in Hong Kong or somewhere, it causes total collapse of economy in Southeast Asia 10 years, I think 2 decades back. And that was, in fact, the first application of chaos theory came. Now, in sociological context, a small changes in decision by the political masters. For example, when our country got partitioned, I think it is important that small changes in decision making here and there actually changed the, history of free India. Small change. And so that happens. A small change can cause lot of things. So that's why the spirituality comes there. A small change in your heart. Probably you can change. There's one small thing which Thakur said, that small moment can lead to lot of other things, can open up your whole future. A small effort, a small moment is much more valuable than many wasted times. So it is just basically with a cup of tea, you think maybe, no, yes, sure, probably not. But a small change with a small cup, you can get an idea, and one of the directions can actually lead you to the correct decision making. This is what is called the chaos theory. And probably the spirituality is one that helps you take the right decision. Because there is nothing which can control you. The chaotic footprint was visible during the mass exodus of people from Burma. That is the Bengali Hindus and not Rohingyas. Many that managed to escape. And that time, if I hear from my parents and grandparents, that many Satsangi families actually, they had to come to India. They had a mass exodus from that Burma. And many of them, some of them could feel that as if they are called by Thakur's image and all that. So, this kind of personal feelings they had, and they thanked. So, this kind of spirituality may be a feelings. In fact, I just saw a neuroscience journal in which they say that many of the so-called prophets, they have what is called samadhi and all these things that basically they have epileptic fits. Then it was challenged, and then they found out that there is a difference between epileptic fits and some of the stages attained by some people, because the antenna, the receiving capacity of some people are totally different. So this kind of, receiving and emitting of ideas, this is probably where the future science will depend on, because the future science, the cognition science, the Science of Consciousness, Physical Review, most important journal of physics is nowadays publishing papers on consciousness. Let us not forget it. So, what is conscious? So, this kind of conscious, the matter can have consciousness. Our great J.C. Bose said that. No one believed it. But now, we slowly believe that consciousness, the boundary between the conscious and unconscious is so thin that you can have something called artificial intelligence, and you can have a debate between this Hawkins and Penrose, where they are debating whether brain can ever beat computer or computer can ever beat brain. So this is a debated subject, and this is a must read, the debate between Hawkins and Penrose. But Robert Penrose is in favor of brain. He's saying brain is superior, whereas Stephen Hawking said, no, computer is superior. So this kind of debate always goes on. We have heard that 1 million of monkeys at 1 million of keyboards could produce the complete works of Shakespeare. And now, thanks to the internet, we know that it is not true. Just monkeys writing random things cannot produce Shakespeare's work. But that was something which was a belief, that basically everything evolves randomly. But there is some pattern in it. So what is the pattern in it? No one knows. What kind of coherence goes? This is one of the questions which you can call is linked to the spirituality, because you really don't know how unfolded protein suddenly folds. You don't know how evolution took place from the clay, because that's just like these words, that if you make the monkeys write on the press the keyboard for even millions of years, they won't have come with the Shakespeare's work. I'll just mention one small episode by Ray Archer Hauserman, who came to satsang and he wrote a book called Ocean in a Teacup. I am not mentioning about that book. I am mentioning about something what happened to Hauserman. He once practiced some of the things, small things which Thakur used to say, and he came to Thakur and he said that, okay, now I am really in a state of elevation. I think that I can conquer the world. Then what Thakur said was that, okay, please go and please take this gentleman. There's a person who wanted a room, and please stay with him. It so happened that person was a bit problematic, really problematic, and within 2-3 days, his life was hell. Then he came and he said, okay, I really cannot stay here. It's terrible for me. He is really a pain in the neck and I cannot stay with him. Then he said, what happened to your conquering the world? You cannot conquer a human being. You cannot conquer a person. So if you cannot conquer a person, you cannot conquer the world. So firstly, small things, he used to give teaching in very practical terms, using very small examples. Quality of life, and this x-axis is fear. If you have higher fear, your quality of life goes. So there's a book in satsang. It is a valuable book called Satyanusaran. His first line is, if you want to come to dharma, you have to be a courageous person. So moment to have less fear, that means your quality of life goes up. Your quality of life goes up if you really want to get into dharma. You have to be a courageous person, not a fearful person, not a scary person. So basically, you have dharma is equal to survival plus development. It is not only survival, it is survival plus development. So you have what is called adaptation and resourcefulness. To both together, it leads to what is called as survival. Moving towards improv. I'll just mention about this. It is called counter Boltzmann and pro Darwin. Why Boltzmann and Darwin comes here? That Boltzmann's theory says that the universe is going to die a heat death because there is a law of thermodynamics, second law, which tells you that everything is going from ordered to disordered state. What did Darwin say? Darwin said everything is coming from the state of disorder to order. What is evolution? Evolution is nothing but coming from disorderly states to orderly states. So, the dichotomy between Boltzmann and Darwin is something like the dichotomy between the spirituality and science. Although none of them are wrong, but what is the difference? Boltzmann is right if you have an isolated system. If you have an isolated system, then order will definitely go towards disorder. But if you want to have a evolving systems like Darwin believed, then you have to have an open system where exchange of ideas are possible. You have to have a breathing space. And that breathing space has to be from the outside the system. And Schrödinger in his book, What is Life, wrote very nicely that there should be what is called a negentropy, negative entropy. That is order creating agent, like the sunlight. Like the sunlight, you have to have an order creating agent which keeps us ordered. Thakur means one who induces some kind of conflict. Thakur, that is some kind of conflict. And that is going against trends. Unless you get a conflict, unless you face a conflicting situation, if you have a very smooth pastime, go somewhere, learn some prayers, heard some songs, relax. No. You have to have real conflicts to have that kind of evolution of Chaitanya, because Chaitanya doesn't come in an idle way. It has to come through conflicts. Just like fission and fusion doesn't come in a very ordinary way. It comes after a lot of exposition and emission of energy or absorption of energy. Similarly, Chaitanya also comes after a lot of conflicts in it. It's just not, it will come smoothly in a relaxing mood, having a holiday home. It will not come there. When people are talking about Tar Kripate Hoyeche Kripa is a very common word in the spirituality. We said that Kripa means kore power. That is, you have to get something, you have to do something. You cannot get Kripa unless you do something. I know, if I am not wrong, that Subhash Bose was one of the person who came to Thakur once. And he was different from the trendy spiritual leaders who could actually, think in a different way. He never made satsanga populist movement like many of the missions and many of the sanghs had. He never made it. Actually, if I am not wrong, actually he just let it go, let it break into pieces. But what he said, that unless you yourself as a person realize that there is different way of thinking, nothing is going to happen. On the other hand, you can change the world. That also he said. So, it is our sincere hope that the light cone of his teaching would spread across a broad section of our society as we move towards a smart future, a future that combines digital with spiritual, omics with analytics, and deep learning with ethics. Because as my previous speaker very correctly said, that we have a lot of lack of ethics in our learning. That's why you have scientists publishing papers in journals and immediately it is retracted because they probably produced false data. So this kind of unethical behavior is common in scientists, social scientists, biological science, very common. Ethics, it is not learning alone, learning plus ethics. And why it comes? Because probably if you have a publication, you have probably one promotion and all that. Just for that greed, incorrectly depict science. And that is common in China, where it is incentive based. In China, there's a lot of, this kind of fraudulent activities in science. And omics means science of all this bioinformatics, this proteomics, genomics, and all this. And then now you can hear about analytics. And analytics means you analyze things, like big data analytics. So omics is a generation of data, analytics is the analysis of data. When we talk about a digital world will produce only cyber crimes, as again my previous speaker said. Unless there is a mix of spirituality, unless there is a mix of motivation, correct motivation in it, you will only produce hackers, but will not produce servers who will serve people. The same technology, same algorithm can be, recently the Twitter people said that Twitter was selectively blocking because there was a problem with algorithm. So algorithms will be wrong only if your motivation is wrong. Algorithm is produced by the human people, human being. Algorithm cannot go wrong. Thank you very much.
আপনাদের কাছে একটা অনুরোধ, এই ভিডিওটা আপনাদের কেমন লাগলো বা আপনাদের যদি কোনো প্রশ্ন থাকে এই ভিডিওর বিষয়ের উপরে, তাহলে আপনারা নিচে কমেন্ট করবেন। যদি ভালো লাগে অবশ্যই একটা লাইক দিয়ে দেবেন। আর এই ধরনের ভিডিও কন্টিনিউয়াসলি পেতে আপনারা অবশ্যই ধর্মকথা চ্যানেল সাবস্ক্রাইব করবেন। নমস্কার।